Forres is a small town in the north of Scotland. It's a short journey to the legendary Loch Ness, the second deepest loch in Scotland at 755 feet, and allegedly home to a deadly monster. But Forres has its own legends as well, its own tales of the bizarre, violent deaths, a strong link to ancient pagan practices, and home to the curious Museum of Automata. Welcome to Forres. This is the Sunos Stone. It is the largest monument of its kind in Scotland, measuring over 21 feet. There are a lot of myths and legends associated with it. Some suggest it is originally a Picto-Scottish monument, and others suggest a connection to the real-life King Macbeth. If you are familiar with Shakespeare's tale, Double Double, Toil and Trouble, Fire Burn and Cauldron Bubble, the suggestion is that the three witches that persuaded Macbeth to embark on his murderous plan were sealed, trapped inside of this monument. Shortly after, Macbeth set up his home here in Forres. But what exactly is the Sunos Stone? What is its real history? And what does it have to do with the Celtic culture around this part of Scotland? Well, we'll get back to that a little later on. For now, I want to tell you about an entirely different stone, and for that, we need to head up there. Come on. This is Nelson Tower. It was built to commemorate Lord Nelson, and it sits upon Cluny Hill here in Forres. There is a wonderful view of the sea from up here. Beautiful, lovely. But for many people, it was a less than appealing sight. During the late 16th to early 18th century, Scotland was the global centre for witch trials. 4,000 people were accused, and hundreds were executed. If you were in Edinburgh, you would be executed by being taken up to Castle Hill, strangled, and your body burned. But if you were here in Forres, it was much more of a spectator sport. You see, this is a rather steep hill, today covered with a lot of greenery, a lot of trees. But 500 years ago, it had a steep, direct view down. Witches who had been found guilty would be encased in a barrel. They would have sharp objects driven through it. The barrel rolled down the hill, and wherever it lands, their body would be burned. This is the Witch's Stone. It marks the location where one of those barrels allegedly came to a stop, and a poor innocent woman was executed in front of an angry mob. From Cluny Hill, witches were rolled in stout barrels through which spikes were driven. Where the barrels stopped, they were burned with their mangled contents. This stone marks the site of one such burning. It's not entirely clear when the stone was placed here, but a story goes that shortly afterwards, a local took the stone and broke it up to use to build a house. The person who stole it became very unwell, and the people believed it to be cursed, so they placed the stone back and repaired it. Of course, witchcraft isn't the only magic on display in Forres. Just a stone's throw away from the Witch's Stone is something that you're going to either love or be terrified by. Or maybe both. There is one more place that I want to visit before we leave Forres. It's got nothing to do with stones or witches. It's something altogether entirely different. Strange, macabre, and magical.
Automata are machines that replicate life, and from the beginning of time we've been really interested in recreating life. It's God's job, and we quite like God's job. So that's what we've done. Everything that moves, let's try and make it ourselves. It's the size of the mechanism is tiny. So that's like just a bit bigger than you'd have in a clockwork mouse, you know, and it does all that work. Just. The earliest physical examples probably date back 1,000 years, but they actually go back into mythology. So we have Hero of Alexandria 2,000 years ago giving us plans for automata. And then you could go back even further than that to the mythology before that with Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, which are packed full of real proper mechanical automata. The House of Automata came about, it started in London. I was trained as a clockmaker, so I changed from actual clocks to clockwork figures. Because they're at dance and drink and sing, they're a bit more interesting than clocks, arguably. And that's how we started. So busy workshop, then we started dealing, and then we started our own exhibition, a museum of automata. At the moment, there's a huge focus on AI and trying to replicate temporal life, the brain. But actual physical movement has always been there and still remains a fascination for us. When you replicate life in its entirety, say with animatronics, where you want every aspect, it tends to fail. There's a huge clang because your brain's looking for the errors and they're always there. But if you just have a few pointers to life, like a life-size lady automaton, and then you notice the chest heaves, that suddenly tips you into the uncanny valley. So yeah, let the brain fill in the blanks and then it's more lifelike than anything else. Because it needed, the tube had developed a kink which stopped it. It's needing some very fine adjustment, so he's on pause at the moment, excuse the pun. Yeah. I think magic and automata gel really well because of one underlying idea, the idea of power. The magician is about power, the power to do things that nobody else can do. And it was the same with automata. They were instruments of power when they were, not so much now when they're more instruments of entertainment. And you could probably say the same about magic, actually, yes. But originally it's all about awe and wonder and power.
A short drive from Forres to the southwest uncovers stones that date back even further than the Witcher's Stone and are even more cherished by people than the Sunos Stone. This is Clava Cairns and is just one of about 50 cairns of this type in this area of Scotland alone. Built sometime in the Bronze Age, between 3200 BC and 900 BC, these are not just monuments to the gods or celestial observation points. This is a graveyard. The two largest structures are passage graves. Usually each tomb might only contain a single body. The passage graves' entrances are oriented southwest in the direction of the sun in midwinter. Originally these would have been much higher and covered in earth. In between the two larger structures is a smaller ring cairn, also a grave but inaccessible without climbing over it. There is also a fourth, much smaller and simpler stone circle. So these Clava cairns, there's a odd peacefulness here, which I guess isn't odd, it makes sense. It's essentially a funerary burial area. Quite a calm and quiet area. But people keep climbing all over the cairns. Please don't do that. During a funeral at a place like Clava Cairns, the dead would be celebrated, rather than just mourned, and have an emphasis on the person as they were when alive, with music, drums, poetry and eulogies. But don't interfere with the burial site. A curse is said to harm anyone who has the audacity to try and remove stones from Clava Cairns. The Inverness Tourist Board once received a £2 stone in the post, along with an anonymous letter from Belgium. The sender was terrified and pleaded for the stone to be returned to its rightful place. You see, a couple of months beforehand, he had been visiting Clava Cairns and taken one of the stones as a souvenir. Bad luck befell him. He lost his job, he broke his arm, his wife became deadly ill, his daughter had also broken a limb, and his cat called him a Okay, maybe not the last one. Hoping the bad luck would stop, he returned his stolen trinket. We don't know what happened to him. Some people say he died. And by some people I mean me. I'm just guessing, but wouldn't that be a fitting climax to the curse of the Clava Cairns? But what of the stone that started our story? For that, we have to head back to Forres.
So what is this? And am I even saying it correctly? Probably not. Suno stone. It's probably pronounced Swaino stone. Suggestion being it's named after a Danish king called Sweyn. However, he ruled at a time after this monument was built, well over 1200 years ago. So what exactly is it? It shows a scene of battle, decapitated heads, people in war. There is a Celtic cross towards the top. It's suggested that it represents a battle between the local Picts here in Scotland and the Viking invaders. Some even suggest it spent some time underground before being unearthed again and brought back out into the light of day. It is part of Scotland's history. It is part of a long gone past, every bit as much as those witch trials and those cairns and stone circles, back when this world around us was ruled by the Picts.